In studio with our co-hosts, the return of a pain-free New York Times best-selling author, John Gilstrap. Mr. Gilstrap.
Ta-da!
Catch John on Friday, tomorrow. I think 6:30 is when the meet and greet begins.
6:30 is when the meet and greet. Yep, at Four Seasons on West Drummond Street in Shepherdstown. Love to see everyone.
And then the program is from 7 to 7:30.
Yeah, it's always, they're squishy numbers, but yeah, somewhere in there.
All right. Also, Jefferson County Prosecuting Attorney Matt Harvey, who has no jurisdiction whatsoever in Berkeley County.
That's the way it should be.
Could you pursue somebody into Berkeley County to continue to enforce the law?
As a prosecutor?
Yeah. Like if you're prosecuting somebody and they run out of the courtroom into Berkeley County, can you go get them?
I'd do it.
I'd do it.
I'd do it, yeah. John couldn't. Well,
he can now.
He can now, but
run.
Okay.
I would pursue him, absolutely.
I get in my neighborhood golf cart.
I'm that type of prosecutor.
Do you have the neighborhood golf cart?
I do.
Yeah, what do you have?
Actually, Crest Creek Golf Course just sold their last generation of golf carts, and I bought one of them.
Oh, well, congratulations.
So, yeah. I think it tops out at like 8 miles an hour.
Downhill.
Yeah, it's pretty well
when
governed.
the brakes are worn out. Yeah. Our guest in this segment is, I wanted to call him Gary Puckett, from Gary Puckett and the Union Gap, but it's Gary Zuckett, and he does not have a band called the Union Gap, though we texted each other about that last night. Gary's he's the co-executive director of the West Virginia Citizens Action Group. Good morning, Gary. How are you? And thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Rob. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Sounds great, man.
My cell signal's weak out here out on the 2-lane road where I live outside of Charleston here.
Charleston, very good. And you were in Ritchie County for a while?
Yeah, I landed in Ritchie County in the mid-'70s. I was part of that back to the land rush, the folks getting out of the cities, and I don't know, Earth Day was 1970, and people were just looking for maybe a little more natural lifestyle. So I moved a mile up a dead-end dirt road in Ritchie County and grew an organic garden and raised chickens and bees and family. But now I'm doing this, so I don't know how it quite got there. I turned it. I think what happened was that the power company came across their power line with a helicopter and started spraying leftover Agent Orange on the right-of-way to kill off the brush, and sprayed right over my organic garden, and the tomatoes started growing their leaves upside down, and we got sick when we ate them, so we had to plow it all under, and that sort of got me into the activist arena.
Is that a true story? Did that really happen?
That's an absolutely true story.
Wow. What was the result of that ultimately?
Well, there's a little circle in Parkersburg on the map of the power company there that says no spray zone. That's the result of that. Okay. But I got hooked up with the Environmental Council, West Virginia Environmental Council. I'm an ex-president of that organization, and at the time they were housed in the West Virginia Citizen Action Office in Charleston. Started hanging out with the Citizen Action folks and going up to the Capitol as a volunteer citizen lobbyist for environmental justice issues, and I've been doing that for the last 35 years now.
Very good. Okay, you folks are currently running ads across the state dealing with the One Big Beautiful Bill in Washington, D.C., and you have some objections to it, Gary. What are some of the problems you see with this bill?
Well, we call it the one that, the big bad boondoggle bill.
Mm-hmm.
That's our name for it. And and just got to hear my ad while I was on hold. So
yes.
That was interesting. Well, there's so much. This thing's turned into a Christmas tree, as most reconciliation bills do, because it's a must-pass bill, right? It's the bill that they have to pass in order to keep government open. Their deadline's September 30, right? And lots of things are wrong with this bill. My nickname for it is a reverse Robin Hood bill, because it takes health care and food away from families that are struggling, working families that are struggling, and it provides enormous tax cuts to the wealthy. So that's the long and short of it. The Medicaid program here in West Virginia, it covers about a third of our population, and it's an integral part of our rural economy. It's what's keeping our rural hospitals open, is, the $1 billion in federal money that comes into the state, into the Medicaid system, that keeps people healthy and, keeps our rural hospitals open. So, if they cut the Medicaid program down to the point where our rural hospitals can't stay open, everybody suffers, not just Medicaid recipients.
Have they suggested that? Excuse me, this is John Gilstrap. Have they suggested cuts that are that deep?
The cuts are built into this bill, and depending on what comes out, over 10 years, they're talking about billions of dollars of cuts across the country. So we really do, I think, have concerns about how it's going to affect our state economy. The other thing is, the Medicaid expansion program that I was there when Governor Tomlin and Senator Rockefeller had that little signing ceremony that signed West Virginia up for that. And it made health care available to so many more folks, mostly working people, because these are people who had income, but didn't, their income wasn't small enough to afford to be able to be on Medicaid, and expanded that into a population of working West Virginians that were working but still didn't make enough money to be able to buy health insurance on the market.
I have not read the big, beautiful bill, but I've read the highlights that certainly have come out from the White House and some of the criticisms coming from the other side. There's a fear that you talk about that these things are going to happen, and fear is real. But according to the White House, the Medicaid, a lot of the savings is coming from dropping 1.4 million illegal immigrants off of the system to allow more money to aid those who actually have earned it, that the program is for. Do you have information, or do you have numbers that have said that Medicaid is going to be slashed in West Virginia, or is that just a concern of what you fear might happen?
Well, as far as the immigrants goes, these are folks that are processing our chicken nuggets out there in the Eastern Panhandle. People that are picking our apples. People are paying into the system with their, the taxes on their income, but not getting a whole lot of benefits out of things here. I don't buy that. I just don't buy it. I don't know where to go with this.
Then why do they do it? They get paid.
What's your question, Matt?
Well, if there's no benefit for them, then why are they doing it?
Well, it gets taken out of your paycheck.
No, he said that the workers they're working, they're paying into us, but they're not getting any benefit. Well, then why are they doing
benefit?
it?
They're getting a paycheck, but they're not accruing Social Security benefits, even though they're getting Social Security taken out of their paychecks, right? Because they're not documented.
So if you're illegal in the United States, you shouldn't have to pay the payroll taxes when you're getting paid.
I'm just that's not where I'm going with this. But some of the other things on this bill, there's some critical cuts to programs in beside the healthcare arena into the energy sector. I mean, I was just listening to public radio this morning where our former state director of our economic development was saying that he was really unhappy with proposed cuts to the clean energy credits that was funding the Nucor and the facility that's being built by Berkshire Hathaway in what county is that? Right along the river there, and then the new steel mill that's being put together. These are all being put together with these clean energy credits. That's economic development. That's jobs for West Virginia. There's so much in this bill that really gives pause. Like I said, it's a must-pass bill. So these kinds of things really tend to turn into a Christmas tree, where they well, this thing's going to pass anyhow. Let's put our little project in. Let's put our tax cut in it. But the stated purpose, that the administration says is they want to, eliminate the waste, fraud, and abuse of the system. And I think that's a laudable goal. I think we can all agree on that we want to eliminate waste, fraud, and in order to, reduce the deficit. But this bill, all the sources that I see say that it's going to increase the deficit from $2 to $3 trillion because of all of the tax giveaways to the wealthy that mainly benefit the wealthy.
So
Well, say. Go ahead.
I was going to ask. So Gary, and this is Matt Harvey.
Yeah.
So what is your organization's strategy and your ultimate goal if this is a must pass? Excuse me.
Yeah. Well, we're reaching out to our representatives in Washington, and we're stating our concerns as clearly as we can, and then we're backing it up with some of the public events and the advertising, like you've been listening to on the radio station, in order to raise the awareness, because we really think that this will do more damage than good, especially here in West Virginia. And we're trying to alert the people that push the red and the green buttons there in D.C. about that.
What kind of response have you received so far?
Well, we're hearing concerns from our senators. I know that Senator Justice has expressed a concern about the effect that this bill might have on our West Virginia state budget. And we've heard that, Shelley Capito is concerned about, keeping health care available to folks here in West Virginia. So we're hoping that, if we generate enough of a public outcry from constituents, from citizens, that will get their attention about these issues that we feel are really critical. We'll be next Wednesday, we'll be having a vigil outside the Cabin Creek Health Clinic on the west side of Charleston with doctors and nurses and people from the community. It's pretty much going to be a press conference, then all afternoon open mic where people can come and state their concerns and their issues that they have with the proposed legislation. We're also working with a group called the West Virginia Poor People's Campaign and other groups to hold what's basically going to be a town hall meeting down in Beckley not this Saturday, but next Saturday.
Are you doing anything in the Eastern Panhandle, Gary?
We don't have as much reach into the Eastern Panhandle as we do in the southern part of the state here. But I do understand that there is at least a small group of citizens that show up outside Raleigh Moore's office every week to express their concerns about what's going on. And I think what this really shows is our system does need a lot of adjustment. I before I got on, I looked up. There's a web page that's put out by the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, ITEP, and they put out a list of corporations that are paying barely any taxes every year, and in their I see their 2021 list here that AT&T Incorporated paid a negative effective federal tax rate of a minus 4.1%. Ford Motor Company paid 1% in federal taxes. General Motors paid 0.2%. Charter Communications, the cable company, big cable company, paid a minus 0.2% in taxes.
Isn't that kind of a different issue, though? I mean, in terms of the big beautiful bill, whatever call it, whatever you want. How do you overcome? And again, I'm just on the White House site here, so that no taxes on tips and overtime. They're not going to touch Medicaid. That's just what they say. Largest tax cut in history. Extra $5,000 on average in America's pockets. You got the border wall. You've got the child tax credit increases to $2,500 per family. I don't see where this is all just for the wealthy. I see a lot of what I read here. There's a lot of stuff for the common person. Now, granted, a 5% tax cut for somebody who makes $50,000 a year is going to be different than a 5% tax cut on somebody that makes $5 million a year. But I would argue the impact is probably larger on somebody who's trying to squeak by on $50,000 a year, and now finally they've got an extra $2,500. So how do you overcome the positives with what I'm hearing are fears of what might be negative, as opposed to what's actually in the bill, according to this site, that is real?
Mm-hmm. Well, just this. There's a lot in there. Let me try to unpack some of it. Despite how many times they say there's no cuts to Medicaid in this bill, the bill sent from the House does direct the committee that does fund, does the funding for Medicaid to make cuts in that only could be done through cutting Medicaid. So, no, it doesn't say cut Medicaid this amount, but it says cut this amount out of your budget. And the only way to do that is to cut Medicaid. Cool. And yes, I agree that people on the lower end of the income scale will get some benefits out of this, but the relative fairness of those benefits is something that I would question, because if you look at the top 1% of the earners in West Virginia, it would get about a $50,000 tax cut annually, which is it's not enough money to buy a decent new car these days. The folks on the other end would barely get save enough money to make a 1 month of a car payment. So there's a big disparity there.
Is it your hope, Gary, that they would have raised the top level tax rate like it happened under the Clinton administration when it went up to 39.6%?
Yeah, I really think that people making the most and getting the most benefit out of our economy need to be, chipping in more to help keep everything going. I was thinking about this a little earlier, and I didn't get a chance to do the research, but I remember reading that, back in the 50s, and I'm a child of the 50s, I grew up watching Ozzie and Harriet and, Romper Room and all that stuff. But back in the 50s, during the so-called Golden Age, corporations were funding about 2/3 of our federal government through their taxes. And working families and other folks were putting in about a third. If you look at that now, it's flipped, whereas working families and small businesses and stuff are paying 2/3 of the bill for the federal government, and the big corporations are down to a third. I'd like to at least get us back to half and half. So yeah, I think that these big companies that aren't they're having a negative tax rate need to be paying more into the system.
Yeah, we've done shows on this before. The effect of companies paying a negative tax rate really has to do with the rules that Congress has established in the tax code that give you the ability to do a variety of things with your books and claiming of losses and deferring of gains and whatever that allow you to and credits and such that allow you to have a negative tax rate. Congress could end that tomorrow, just like they've done with many other things in the tax code by doing what they want to do, but it's probably not going to happen because you don't want to discourage businesses from
Wall Street has the
doing
best
business.
Lobbyists money can buy, and they get and they earn their keep.
Yeah, well,
the tax system is so slanted in regard to helping the corporations keep as much of their money as possible, which
But
can't blame them for that. That's what they're for.
I'm sorry.
I'm just saying you can't blame them. That's what they're for. They're for making money and as much as possible. But we need to, make sure that they kick in at their fair share of the operations for our government and our society. That's basically enabling them to make that money.
But the vast majority of businesses in the United States are not these major corporations. They're mom and pop shops or small businesses, however you would define that. I owned a consulting firm at one point. I employed about 14 people. And, it's one of those things where every dollar that I spent on salaries and benefits and rent and all that was a dollar that I decided not to keep. And I invest these things as my money. I invest it into these people and things in order to create a bigger company that creates better, helps more. It was a consulting business, helps more people. And then there's the additional burden of this, 7.5%, I guess, is the corporate share of payroll taxes. And then you've got the property taxes that are local, and you got, all of these taxes that go on top of being able to provide a job for people who will then help the company. I think it's unfair to classify any of that as greed. Corporations exist to make money, and if the tax code does allow deductions, then it would be irresponsible not to take them.
Gary, I'm just about out of time. How do people find out more about the West Virginia Citizens Actions Group?
Well, they can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever you call it. Our webpage is WVCAG for citizenactiongroup.org.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate your time today.
Hey, anytime. Love to talk anytime. Thank you, guys.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
All right.